Picture this. I'm sitting in my favorite chair, the one I've had for years, with the sun gently setting outside my window. The world's quieter at this time of day and there's something soothing about it. But then, out of nowhere, I feel that familiar, nagging itch on my back. You know the kind. It's the one that's always in a spot that's just out of reach, right between the shoulder blades or down near the lower back. I find myself squirming a bit, trying to scratch it, but it never seems to go away. I keep thinking, just dry skin, it'll pass. But it doesn't. I've lived a long time, seen a lot, and come to understand that when the body speaks up, whether it's an ache or an itch, it's usually trying to tell you something. So I start thinking. You see, as we age, things start changing inside, little by little. It's like the body is giving us signs, subtle ones at first, to remind us that we're not as young as we once were. When you're young, an itch is nothing more than a little inconvenience. But as we get older, those little inconveniences, like this itch on my back, can sometimes be the body's way of whispering something more serious. I started paying more attention to it. The back is one of those tricky places that's hard to reach, and with age, circulation can slow down in spots like this. When the blood doesn't flow as easily, our skin can become dry, itchy, and even irritated. But the real kicker is that sometimes this itch is the first warning sign that the body's internal systems aren't functioning quite as well as they should. And when your circulation is struggling, it's not just your skin that's affected, it's your heart, your kidneys, and other organs that rely on healthy blood flow to function properly. It was a wake-up call for me. The back itch wasn't just a random irritation, it was telling me something about my health that I hadn't even considered. And that's something I've learned over the years. We can't afford to ignore these signs. The body doesn't speak up often, but when it does, it's important to listen. Ignoring something as small as an itchy back might seem harmless at first, but if it's persistent, it could be an indicator of a bigger issue, one that deserves our attention. A few months ago, I started noticing something strange. It wasn't a big deal at first, just a little itch here and there on my shins. I figured it was dry skin, something I had come to expect in my older years. But then the itching didn't stop. It wasn't just one spot either. It spread all over both of my shins, and no matter how much I scratched or applied lotion, it seemed to persist. At first, I brushed it off. I thought it was just another part of getting older, and we all know how skin can get dry and flaky as the years go by. But after a while, I started wondering if it was something more. You see, as we get older, our circulation slows down. When I was younger, I never gave much thought to how my blood was flowing, but now it's something I've learned to pay attention to. The blood doesn't rush through us the way it used to, and it's the legs, especially the shins, that often show the first signs of that struggle. The veins and arteries don't work as efficiently, and when that happens, the blood starts pooling, particularly in the lower parts of the body. This can lead to swelling, discoloration, and yes, that persistent itch. One day I decided to take a closer look. The skin on my shins had become a little dry, but more than that, it seemed to have a dull, almost pale quality to it. It was a bit swollen too. That's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with dry skin or irritation. There was something more going on. This itch wasn't just annoying, it was a signal that my circulation wasn't what it should be. It was my body trying to tell me something important. And it's not just me. It happens to a lot of us as we age. It turns out, persistent itching on the shins can often be linked to poor circulation. But that's not all. It could also indicate problems with the kidneys or veins. Conditions like peripheral artery disease, PAD, or even kidney disease can cause blood flow to become restricted, leading to those itchy, swollen legs. The lesson here is that we shouldn't just ignore an itch because it seems harmless. If it's persistent, if it doesn't go away, it's worth paying attention to. I'm grateful I caught it early, but if I hadn't, it could have turned into something more serious. So now whenever I feel that itch on my shins, I don't just reach for the lotion. I make sure to check in with my doctor because sometimes those little signs are the body's way of saying, something's not right here. Now, let me tell you about my hands. You might not think much of an itch on your hands, but I have learned over the years that it's often more than meets the eye. You see, my hands have been with me through thick and thin, decades of work, travel, and even those countless cups of coffee that always seem to be within arm's reach. But a while ago, I started noticing something strange. I had this itch on the palms of my hands, and not just once, but repeatedly. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe it was just dry skin, a result of the winter weather, or maybe from the fact that I had been using my hands more lately, sorting through old boxes, cleaning, things like that. But after a while, it became hard to ignore. The itching wasn't going away no matter how much lotion I applied. And it wasn't just on the palms. It started spreading to the tops of my hands too. It wasn't just a light irritation, it was persistent. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't like any itch I'd had before. It was as if my skin itself was telling me something wasn't quite right underneath. So I started paying attention. As we get older, the circulation in our hands can start to slow down. The skin on the tops of our hands gets thinner, and because of that, it's more sensitive to changes in blood flow. But it's not just about dry skin. That itch, it could be something more. Over time, I came to learn that itchy hands could be a sign of nerve issues or even circulation problems. When our veins and arteries aren't as efficient at delivering blood to our extremities, it shows up in places like our hands and feet. And if you've ever dealt with poor circulation, you'll know how it can lead to itching, discomfort, and even swelling. But there's something else I learned. Persistent itching in the hands, especially if it's accompanied by other symptoms like tingling or numbness, can also point to something a little more serious, like diabetes or nerve compression. It's a common problem for older folks, and it's something I didn't take seriously enough at first. The more I read about it, the more I realized that I was ignoring an important warning sign. Sometimes it's easy to think, oh, it's just dry skin. But when it's constant, when it doesn't go away, it could be a clue to a bigger issue. So now whenever I get that itching feeling in my hands, I don't brush it off. I make sure to check in with my doctor and make sure everything's running smoothly. Our hands are precious, and if they're telling us something's wrong, it's better to listen early on than wait until it gets worse. Now, I want to talk about something that might sound a bit surprising: our back. It's one of those places on the body that over the years, you tend to forget about, but when it starts itching, you sure can't ignore it. The other day, I was sitting in my old chair, relaxing as the sun slowly dipped below the horizon. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I felt that familiar itch between my shoulder blades. I tried to scratch it, but it wasn't quite reachable. You know how it is. You twist and turn, trying to find that sweet spot, but it seems like it's always just out of reach. So, like any old man would do, I went about my business, thinking, just dry skin, nothing to worry about. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. As I've gotten older, I've noticed that these little itches, whether on the back, legs, or hands, aren't as insignificant as I used to think. You see, our skin isn't as resilient as it used to be. It dries out quicker, it's more sensitive, and things don't heal as fast. But there's another factor to consider: circulation. As we age, blood flow becomes a little slower, especially in places like our back. The back, especially the upper and lower parts, is a tricky area because it's not always easy to tell when something's off. When circulation starts to slow down, we often notice it in spots that are harder to reach, like the back. When blood doesn't flow as freely, it can cause all sorts of problems, from dry skin to irritation and, yes, that relentless itch. What's more, a persistent itch on your back can sometimes signal more than just skin problems. It could be a sign that your internal circulation isn't up to par, and when your blood flow is sluggish, it's not just your skin that's affected, it's your heart, your kidneys, and other vital organs that depend on healthy circulation. I realized that I had been ignoring my body's little warning signals. The back itch wasn't just an innocent irritation, it was my body trying to tell me that something wasn't quite right and that it needed attention. So, instead of brushing it off, I started paying closer attention to my health. I made sure to talk to my doctor, and lo and behold, it turned out that there were a few areas where my circulation could use a little boost. I'll tell you this, the back may seem like a small thing, but if you find yourself constantly itching there, it's worth looking into. Sometimes, these seemingly minor itches are actually early signs of something that needs to be addressed before it gets worse. And the earlier you catch it, the better off you'll be. Now, let me take a moment to talk about something that might seem a little unexpected: your hands. We don't always think about them, do we? They're just there, doing their job, gripping, holding, working. But let me tell you, over the years, I've learned not to ignore my hands when they start to itch. It's funny how something so small can give you a big clue about your health. I remember a time not too long ago when I began to feel this strange itch on the palms and backs of my hands. It wasn't just an occasional itch, it was persistent. At first, I chalked it up to the cold weather, dry skin and all that. But as days went by, it didn't let up. It bothered me more and more, no matter how much lotion I used or how often I tried to scratch it away. I started to wonder if there was something more to it than just dry skin. As I sat there one evening, scratching at my hands, I started to realize that this wasn't the same kind of irritation I had experienced before. I've always had dry skin, and I'm no stranger to the occasional rash or irritation. But this was different. It was like my hands were trying to tell me something. The more I paid attention to it, the more I noticed how my fingers were tingling a bit and how the itch seemed to spread even more. That's when I started connecting the dots. You see, as we get older, the circulation in our extremities, especially in our hands and feet, tends to slow down. The blood isn't pumping quite as efficiently as it used to, and that's where things can get tricky. When blood flow isn't optimal, it can lead to all sorts of discomforts. For me, the itching on my hands was likely a sign that my circulation wasn't up to snuff, and my skin was feeling the effects. But that wasn't the only possibility. Itchy hands can also indicate nerve issues or even conditions like diabetes. Poor circulation, nerve compression, and high blood sugar can all contribute to that nagging sensation in your hands. I knew it was time to listen to what my body was saying. If your hands are itching persistently, especially if they're also tingling or feeling numb, it could be a warning sign that you shouldn't ignore. I made an appointment with my doctor, and as it turned out, my hands were telling me it was time to check in on my health. I'm grateful I didn't brush it off. So here's my advice. If you start to notice those strange itches in your hands, don't just shrug them off. It could be more than just dry skin. Pay attention, get checked out, and make sure your hands are telling you the truth. As I've shared with you today, aging comes with a lot of changes, and some of them show up in the strangest ways. Itches on our back, shins, or hands might seem like nothing more than minor annoyances at first, but I've learned the hard way that these little signs can be our body's way of speaking up. And when your body speaks, it's wise to listen. Each of those persistent itches can be telling you something about your health, something that might not be immediately obvious but could make all the difference down the road. The reality is that as we age, we have to be more attuned to the signals our bodies are sending us. That's why it's so important to pay attention to those minor, seemingly harmless issues before they become something more serious. And I get it. It's easy to just brush things off. We're busy. We've got a lifetime of stories and things to do. But trust me, taking a few moments to take care of ourselves, to be proactive about our health, can make a world of difference. That's why I want to take a minute to encourage you to keep watching and keep learning. We're all in this together, and it's never too late to take charge of our health and well-being. If you found this video helpful, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, Elderly Hacks. We've got a whole lot more to share with you, from tips on staying healthy to little life hacks that make getting older just a bit easier. Our channel is dedicated to providing information and support for people just like you, people who want to live their best, healthiest lives, no matter what age they are. And don't stop here. Subscribe, because we have videos coming out regularly that will help you understand how to care for yourself in new ways. From dealing with aging skin to staying active and sharp as the years go on, we've got a wealth of knowledge to help you live your best life. Plus, when you subscribe, you won't miss any of our tips and tricks that make growing older a little bit easier. So, don't wait. Stay connected with us and join the Elderly Hacks family. Take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll always be the first to know when new videos come out. We're here for you, and we want to keep helping you navigate this journey in the best way possible. Remember, it's never too late to take action and make small changes that could have a big impact on your health. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, my friends.